After sacrificing everything to support my husband through his failures, I returned home to bury my dying father, only to find him in bed with a colleague he barely knew. "I'm sending you back to find myself," he said while booking a five-star hotel for his affair. "Now I'm free and focused on my healing, but can I ever trust love again?" I relocated from a small country to live abroad with my husband at his family's residence to take over his previous position after his business failed. I followed him and resided there for a year and a half while awaiting my paperwork. Yes, that frustrating paperwork took an eternity. I was there with an expired visa and lived in modest circumstances. In the meantime, I retained my job back home and also cleaned heirlooms under the table. My husband and I were very content, even though we had to share a space with his stepsister because he was nearly broke, and my income was insufficient to cover the entire rent. Thus, my mother-in-law and his sister contributed together for a while. Although we lived together, there was constant conflict between his stepsister and me. She openly despised me. Furthermore, my husband refused to stay in a small apartment and declined to accept minor jobs here because he, being from a very privileged background, suddenly found himself losing all his money and only wanted to earn a higher salary immediately. His job was as a real estate agent. It took him a year and a half of struggle to start making money. Fast forward to just a few months later. My husband began earning substantial commissions, millions in fact, and I noticed how money can transform a person. His eyes seemed to glisten with greed. He suddenly desired every materialistic possession he could imagine, biking, traveling, and dining at upscale restaurants, which he would do exclusively with friends and colleagues. At that moment, I saw him transform into the character from the movie, The Wolf of Wall Street. Meanwhile, I finally received approval for my visa and started applying for jobs. However, I had to return home suddenly because my father fell ill. I traveled back across the ocean only to witness him pass away. I stayed home for a month, and when I returned, my husband was cheerful and enthusiastic about us moving into an apartment while I resumed my job search. Everything was arranged, my visa, my job, until, out of nowhere, my husband claimed he was unhappy and confused. I hurried home, pleading with him not to send me back, insisting that everything was fine and would be fine. Then I uncovered that he was having an affair with a colleague who had only been working with him for 2 weeks. This woman would spend her entire day with him, receiving tutoring until night. One night, while he was asleep, I checked his recently deleted messages and discovered that he was already planning to send me back home. He was discussing divorce procedures with her. I confronted him, but he continued to lie. When I asked for his phone, he confidently claimed nothing incriminating would be found, yet there were deleted messages from that person right there. He foolishly forgot to delete them permanently. He attempted to snatch his phone away from me. We struggled briefly until he finally surrendered. Then he pretended to be ill, began vomiting, and apologized, stating he shouldn't have acted that way but that it was over between us. Foolishly, I still wanted to salvage our marriage. The following day, he announced he could not remain in the same room as me. He would either stay at an Airbnb or I would. I left, especially since even his stepsister refused to speak to me and the situation had become unbearably awkward. A few days later, he said, "Since you already know the truth, I am sending you back home." He purchased a ticket, took me to the airport, and assured me that the other woman meant nothing, claiming he was sending me back simply to find himself again. Shortly after I returned home, I discovered that he had booked a five-star hotel to spend 5 consecutive days with that woman the very next day after I left. When I messaged him about this, he began to insult me, accusing me of stalking him and similar allegations. He claimed I had people following him, among other things. He was merciless. Then he started sending me divorce papers and even threatened not to return my belongings unless I signed them, insisting that I had no right to check his phone and claiming I had spoken to his boss's wife about his affair, the woman who had invited me to lunch to see how I was doing. We did talk, and now I believe he feels ashamed for sending his wife back home while being in a relationship with a colleague. He thought he could send me away without me knowing about his affair, and now that everyone at his workplace is aware, he is furious with me. He almost blocked me everywhere and even had his stepsister send me the divorce paper procedures to sign by mail, along with some threats if I did not comply. He is immensely angry with me, even though he was the one who cheated with a woman he had known for only 2 weeks, sent me back home, and shattered our marriage. My mother-in-law supports her son's behavior and accuses me of manipulating the environment surrounding him since everyone, including his close work friends, his boss's wife, and even family members, is asking me for the story. The family assumed I would not sign the divorce papers, but now that I am cooperating in every aspect and do not care about his property or money, they are behaving quite strangely. However, I heard my husband telling everyone that I am a crazy woman and a stalker, attempting to catch up with his tarnished reputation. I was aware that my mother-in-law and her daughter disliked me, but it did not concern me as I believed I was with the love of my life. The love of my life showed me his true colors. It is incredibly painful and bewildering to witness someone you love change so drastically. I sacrificed my family, my life, and my beautiful island to be with him when he was struggling, following him across the ocean to build a life together, only to be betrayed and discarded whenever he wished. I loved him profoundly, but now that I have stepped back, I realize that the love I gave was not honored in the way I deserved. He expected that I would cry for him and beg him to stay, but instead, I have outgrown him. I have chosen peace over unnecessary conflict. Dragging out this situation or making it messier would not have changed the past or made me feel any better. It would have merely kept me tied to something that no longer served me. By letting go easily, I freed myself more quickly. Now I have the space to focus on my healing, happiness, and future, free from toxic individuals. Story 2. My 22-year-old marriage crumbled when I discovered my psychotherapist wife's light affair with a client. It was just innocent fun, she said. Now, as I dive into divorce, she's under investigation, and I just found her Tesla outside his place again. Hello, Reddit. I'm a 44-year-old male who has been married to my wife, a 46-year-old female, for 22 years, and we have 3 children, an 11-year-old female, a 15-year-old female, and a 20-year-old male. In 2022, I requested a divorce and relocated from our home, but I never completed the paperwork. Instead, we began dating again for the past year and a half, attempting to rebuild our relationship. Things were going well until a few months ago when she started to seem distant. She is a psychotherapist specializing in dialectical behavior therapy and informed me that she was overwhelmed by high-needs clients. I took her at her word until one night when I discovered her parked outside a random apartment complex at 3 a.m. She was borrowing my Tesla at the time, and I noticed her location through the car's tracking feature. When I confronted her, she claimed she was simply visiting a friend, although this behavior was extremely out of character for her. Alarm bells went off immediately. I pressed for more details, and she eventually revealed that it was a new friend from work. They were supposed to meet earlier, but their plans were mixed up, resulting in them hanging out late. In our marriage, we have always allowed close friendships with the opposite sex, but we never maintained an open relationship. Nonetheless, something felt very off. She was evasive when I probed further, but after a week she finally disclosed his name. She acknowledged that the situation appeared bad, conceded it was inappropriate, and stated she would not see him outside of work again. That was in early May 2024. Fast forward a few weeks to early June, and I discovered she had returned to his place, staying until 6 a.m. When I confronted her again, she insisted he was merely a friend, claiming she drank too much and fell asleep on his couch. I challenged her, and instead of providing real answers, she said she needed space and requested that I leave her alone for a week. I was not convinced. During that week, I did some digging and found the man's Instagram account, phone number, and address. I reached out, believing that if he was truly only a friend, he would want to clarify things. His response: he called me a little bee and told me to go away. That response only confirmed my suspicions, so I decided to visit his apartment to talk face to face. When he came downstairs, he got right in my face, repeating the same insults and cursing at me. I remained calm and asked what was happening with my wife. He refused to answer and eventually called the police, but after getting off the phone, he shoved me to the ground. Was that assault? I had no desire to escalate the situation, so I left. I informed my wife that I knew something was wrong based on his reaction. That is when she finally confessed to a light affair, claiming it was not physical, just some innocent sharing of memes and fun conversations. I was heartbroken. However, she insisted that I was overreacting and blowing things out of proportion. The aftermath. Over the subsequent months, we continued to communicate, trying to determine if our relationship could be salvaged. We attended music festivals, spent quality time together, and were often intimate. It almost felt like we were rebuilding something. Then in August, she purchased her own Tesla. While I was assisting her in setting up her account, she suddenly fell silent when she realized I could see her car's location just as she could see mine. I told her I had nothing to conceal. However, she insisted on separate accounts. Another warning sign. The very next night, I drove by his apartment. Sure enough, her car was parked right outside. I texted both of them asking her to come out and talk. She refused. I returned home to wait for her. While I was there, I had a strange feeling and decided to check her room. I am not proud of what I did next, but I found a journal sitting out on her work table. I took it and read it. That is when I uncovered the truths. The man she was seeing was not just some random friend. He was one of her dialectical behavior therapy clients, a man with borderline personality disorder. Her journal detailed therapy sessions lasting 4, 5, even 6 hours. She wrote about inappropriate physical contact kissing, dry humping, and discussions about sexual topics. She described their deep emotional connection, fantasizing about a life with him while also struggling with guilt and shame. She was aware that she was risking everything to be with him, yet she could not stop. When she returned home, I confronted her. She broke down, pleading with me not to report her to the Board of Behavioral Health. I left around 2 a.m. and immediately scheduled a session with my own therapist that morning to process everything. It turns out that all therapists are mandatory reporters regarding ethical breaches. My therapist reported her. The investigation. An investigation was initiated, and I was contacted by the Attorney General's office to provide a sworn statement. I kept my testimony vague. I did not want to be vindictive, so I informed them I would not provide photos of her journal unless subpoenaed. I also persuaded my wife to self-report, which she did. The investigation is ongoing, and I assume they are auditing her client records and conducting interviews, but I have no insight until the final report is made public. Meanwhile, our marriage is officially over. We are deeply involved in the divorce process. In retaliation, she obtained a harassment restraining order against me for taking her journal and bombarding her with texts asking why she did this. Still, I occasionally feel a gut instinct that she is still seeing him. And every time I check, I am correct, her car is still parked outside his place at night. She continues to jeopardize everything: her career, her reputation, and our family. Moving forward. As for me, I have been focusing on healing. I am seeing my therapist regularly and staying consistent with my medication. However, I still feel lost. This has been incredibly challenging to process, which is why I decided to articulate it all here. Surprisingly, it feels a bit cathartic. Thank you for reading and providing any support. Story 3. After saving my son's life from a transplant and weathering loss, my husband cheated while I mourned. Learning he wasn't ill but was with another woman shattered me. I won't abandon my son, I told him, but now I must confront the lies. Did I cross the line by exposing his secrets to family? Long story, but I will stick to the facts. From 2020 until 2023, I experienced numerous losses. My mother passed away, my 19-year-old godson died, my 3 dogs died, my best friend's son committed suicide, and finally my 34-year-old son became critically ill and required a transplant. Initially, my husband was somewhat supportive, but when I informed him that I was bringing my son home to die, he became angry and told me he could not do that. I told him that if my son could not come home to die, he could leave because my child is my priority and I would not abandon him. Through immense stress and hard work, I managed to save my son's life and arranged for his transplant just 2 days before he would have died. His recovery would take a year, and during that time my husband began an affair. I recognized that our marriage needed help after everything we had endured, especially me. However, I did not discover the affair until I found evidence in his car 8 months later. I waited 2 days to calmly confront him, which he denied in a childish manner. He claimed that I was going to ruin the marriage because I did not trust him. I was devastated. We got into an argument, and I told him to pack his things and leave if he was not willing to attend therapy with me. Later, I regretted acting hastily, but he was already out. I chose to believe his story and even apologized for not trusting him. I loved him deeply and still do, but the situation did not improve. For the past year, we have been separated, and he told me he was severely ill and living with roommates in a poor environment. I do not know where he lives, and I was worried, but he would not allow me to help him except for cooking some food for him to take home when he would come to fix something at the house. I gave him money, even though we have always maintained separate bank accounts. I also focused on my own healing, developed new interests, and returned to church. We communicated 3 to 4 times a week during the separation and would meet occasionally to work on repairs in the house, but there was no romantic involvement. Our status remained unchanged, but we slowly began to rekindle our friendship. I invited him to work on our marriage and move back in September, but he reacted indignantly and angrily, insisting he would never come back because I had kicked him out. It is my home and we have been together for 13 years. We are both over the age of 55. He continued to confuse me by offering to assist me, even though he abandoned all the bills and house repairs, which amounted to about $60,000. He simply walked away from everything. I loved his family very much, but the moment he left, they all cut ties with me despite his assurances to the contrary. This hurt me even more than his departure. During our separation, he would call to check on me, send birthday and Christmas cards, and offered to paint the house. Last week, a mutual friend reached out to me and informed me that my husband has been living with a woman named Marna, and they were appalled by how he has been lying and misleading me, explaining that the two of them are involved in swinging. This is someone I absolutely trust. She told me he was deceiving me and that everyone at work was aware he was with this woman all along. I had not shared the details of the separation with many people, but evidently my husband had blocked me on all social media and updated his relationship status to in a relationship. Because I have financial resources, I conducted a background check on her and discovered that she has served time in jail and is bankrupt. I informed him almost immediately that I had uncovered this information and that I wanted a divorce, because throughout this entire time I was led to believe he was ill when in fact he is not, and that he was alone and financially struggling. He also lied to his family, causing them to shun me from the very beginning. They treated me horribly. He was so angry that I found out about his deception and infidelity that he has now blocked me from text messages as well. I sent him a long, carefully written email that was neither angry nor bitter but addressed his behavior. I also provided links for filing a no-contest divorce. He is extremely angry and is ignoring me now, but I do not care at this point. I am heartbroken once again. So am I the asshole for my actions this morning? I reached out to his sister-in-law via text, who did not shun me. We were kind of friends until he moved out, but she gracefully distanced herself while still acknowledging me. I have never shared my side of things with his family since they cut me off, but they have hurt me deeply by supporting his infidelity. All along, the family seems to think I have done something unforgivable, which remains unclear to me, when in reality I have been working on the long journey of healing my traumas. I let her know about his secrets, his preference for swinging, which was a significant secret from his younger days before meeting me and which I refused to participate in, and what he did to me. I also informed her about his lies regarding his health, which made me feel excessive pity for him. I had not spoken to any of his family until I sent this message at 3 a.m. I also mentioned that I possess evidence of his involvement with this woman, which he had concealed from me for the past 2 years. I feel guilty about retaliating, but also believe that both he and his family deserve to understand what a jerk he has been and what a liar he is for my own sake. We have no children, and I have requested a divorce 3 times to which he has not responded. He has betrayed me yet again, and it hurts even more. I have not engaged in any spying or snooping while we have been apart over the last year, until last week when I found out. I loved him immensely and believed we could resolve our issues when my son recovered enough to move out. Yet he was unfaithful to me while my son was dying and blamed me for being irrational for suspecting his infidelity. I was naive to believe him after the first time I unexpectedly found his sex toys in his car. Then he continued his affair during our year-long separation, lying throughout the entire time. I'm heartbroken. Part of me believes that I was justified in disclosing his secrets to his family, but I feel that I have compromised my own integrity. It is difficult coming to work where I have been pitied over the past year without realizing he was public with his new relationship while keeping it hidden from me. I am not a gossip, and my faith and integrity mean everything to me. I think I should have gracefully sought a divorce attorney instead of retaliating, but I am too sad to care. Story 4. Caught my husband cheating with his coworker just months after our elopement. When I confronted him about the lipstick I found in his truck, he screamed, "You're crazy," and blamed me for everything. Now he's begging for me back, but can I trust him again? My husband, male, 24 years old, and I, female, 21 years old, had been together for 3 years when I began to notice something was wrong. We moved in together and got married last July after dating for 2.5 years. Initially, everything was great. We established a suitable routine and divided household chores in a manner that we both considered fair. Everything felt perfect, so we eloped and began planning a large celebration for our marriage. We were not really fans of having a traditional wedding. We just wanted to get married and celebrate later. However, things started to decline in August. My husband mentioned that there was a new woman at work and began describing a conversation they had that seemed sexually suggestive. I am not typically jealous, but I did ask him why he thought it was appropriate to talk to another woman like that, and all he said was that she seemed like she would be a good friend. That was the first red flag. Then in October, he got injured at work and was off for a week. During that week, he began to grow distant and impatient with me. The minor annoyances I created, which never bothered him before, escalated into major arguments. Suddenly, he disliked me touching him and requested that we refrain from having sex. I believed it was all my fault, as if I was too much for him, so I respected his wishes and tried to improve myself. During the same week, I discovered bobby pins in our bed. I thought it was strange since I rarely use bobby pins, but I did own some, so I assumed they were misplaced and not from someone else. When I mentioned to my husband that I found bobby pins, he immediately became defensive, insisting they belonged to me and advising me not to read too much into it. November was when everything fell apart. I began finding hair ties in his truck, long curly hairs in our bed, my shampoo and conditioner were being used up rapidly. I discovered earrings in his truck that he claimed belonged to his sister, and his clothes started to smell like Marc Jacobs Daisy perfume, a distinctive scent that I recognized immediately, but I do not own it. On Thanksgiving, he got into an argument with my father, which was unusual for him since he was usually very calm, but he had seemed stressed since October. My husband asked me whose side I was on, and I said my father's since my husband was being disrespectful and instigating arguments. He proceeded to say many hurtful things about my family, and when we returned home that night, he dropped me off and then stayed at his brother's house. When he returned the next day, I asked him if he was cheating, and he swore he was not. I told him about all the things I had discovered, and he said he had no idea why I would think he was cheating and insisted it was all just a strange coincidence because he had been spending more time with his sister. I believed him and tried to move on. A week after Thanksgiving, we were going to his friend's birthday party, and as we went to park, a cat ran in front of the truck, so he slammed on the brakes. My purse spilled out onto the floor, and while cleaning it up, I found a black lipstick. I do not wear black lipstick, and neither does anyone in his family. I held onto it, we partied, and then during the drive home, I lost my composure. I threw the lipstick at him and started demanding to know who she was. He began yelling and calling me crazy, but I would not tolerate it. When we got home, I packed my bags and ended the relationship. He cried and told me that the woman was his coworker and that he was very sorry and regretted it. Since that day, I have filed for divorce and moved back home. He has been pleading for me to return by calling me, crying at night, and leaving presents at my door or on my car while I am at work. I feel somewhat guilty rejecting his efforts. Perhaps time apart from me has made him realize what he has lost. However, I also believe that if he truly loved me, he would have never cheated. He has been reaching out and asking if we can have a conversation, but I am unsure if that is a good idea. Does anyone have experience in a similar situation? What did you do? In summary, my husband cheated on me with a coworker, so I left him, but now he wants to talk, and I am uncertain whether that is a wise choice.